Hello, I am Harsha Wijayawardhana. Today I will be talking about recent work on international domain names in South and East Asian scripts, and especially in Sinhala. I will have this presentation in Sinhala as well. First, we will be recording the in English. So first, I will be overview of the presentation. I will talk a little bit about Sinhala, then about the Sinhala script, evolution of Sinhala script and Brahmi, Sinhala on computers and internet, IDNs, the work on IDNs, and Sinhala generation panel, which we did long time in somewhere in 2014 and 15. Well, the first about a little bit about Sinhala. Sinhala belongs to Indo-European language family and a subfamily of Indo-Aryan. So if you take Indo-European language family, English, German, they have many subfamilies in here. But in this part of the world, we have only one subfamily, which is Indo-Arya. Indo-Arya, and also the Persian comes under Indo-Arya subfamily. Closest relatives of the Sinhala language or the Sinhala script, Sinhala language and script, especially Sinhala language, are from the northern Indian families, such as Hindi, Urdu, Bengali, Oriya, etc. Europe has several Indo-European subfamilies, such as we have a Germanic, German, Romanic, Germanic, and the East Slavic. Slavic is also a subfamily. So we have this English, and German and Swedish belong to Germanic subfamily, whereas from French, Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian belong to Romanic languages. Well, let us look at the script. The very important one is the script. We would like to also show you some of the script. And these scripts come under Abhigida scripts. So there are several scripts that you can see it on the screen. Before we look at the Sinhala is a very cursive, very circular shape script. So you have on the left corner, on the top of the left corner, you have the Ethiopic script, which is also Abhigida. Then we have Thai is on the bottom. Then you have Malayalam, for instance, again on the left bottom, and Zonka from Bhutanese, the beautiful script, which stack up several levels in the sense from top the top of the on a letter you can actually stack up several levels. So all these scripts actually derive from the Brahmi script. And the Brahmi, of course, I have talked about. I have not talked about yet I have talked about the numerals, but not about the Abhigida scripts, the scripts themselves. I mean, I have talked about numerals, but not about the scripts, the letters and the characters. So if you look at the Brahmi, all these Indian East Asian scripts derive from Brahmi, and it was there was the very beginning. It was in Sri Lanka, we believe, that actually the Brahmi came during the Emperor Ashoka's time, but now we have evidence that we had written Brahmi. We have written we have used the written we had used Brahmi as our written script. Goes back about 900 BCE. Potsherds, of course, carry Brahmi, 900 BCE. So it's much more than the 3rd century BCE. So it's actually older than the 3rd century BC. That's when the Ashoka lived. After Ashoka's time, that is after 3rd century, we have quite a number of Brahmi scripts, and from somewhere from 3rd century BCE until about 400 CE, we have quite a number of rock inscriptions, and some of them are which I have covered. 4 numerals. I mean, the numeral for the numerals that I talked about earlier. I have done some of the some of the presentations, and in those I have covered about the some of the the rock inscriptions that you find in Sri Lanka. Sinhala comes from basically from the southern Brahmi, and the Hindi Devanagari. Devanagari is used to write Hindi. Devanagari comes from the northern Brahmi script. So the Sinhala comes from the southern Brahmi script, and Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu, all of these are actually from the southern Brahmi script. Then we have the East Asian scripts like Thai, Kannada, basically all of those are basically come from the again the southern Brahmi, because southern Brahmi gives rise to the Pallava Grantha. From Pallava Grantha, that you have the Thai and those the East Asian scripts. Then we have Brahmi is written from right to left, usually written from Brahmi is usually written from left to right, actually. There are about in Sri Lanka, we have 18 rock inscriptions discovered with Brahmi written from right to left. That is like Aramaic, for instance. Normally, the majority of what we write right now, Sinhala also we write from left to right. I'm sorry that the presentation says right to left, usually written from left to right. In Sri Lanka, 18 rock inscriptions we have discovered, 17, roughly about 17, with the Brahmi written from right to left, 18th to 3rd century BC. In the northeastern part of Ashoka's empire, his regal edicts were written in Prakrit using Kharoshi script. Kharoshi is written from right to left. So I want to make a distinction here. Normally, the Brahmi is written from left to right. In Sri Lanka, we have about 17 rock inscriptions written from right to left. And again, the Kharoshti, Ashoka's empire, we had Kharoshti, which is actually written in Prakrit. That's the basic edicts are written in Prakrit, but using Kharoshti script and written from right to left. As you go towards the Middle East, towards the Persian and then also Babylonian area, basically that area, the Middle Eastern area, that before the Ashoka's time, they used Aramaic. Aramaic actually written from right to left. So what we have is here Brahmi and Kharoshti. You can see basically the Brahmi is on the left, and the you can see the Kharoshti on the right-hand side. And then we have several other scripts that you can see it. Like here, this is the Kharoshti. This is actually a Brahmi on this side of this. It's a Brahmi script. And this is also a Brahmi script. So the postulated, I mean, obviously the popular theory that what we have today is actually the Brahmi came from Aramaic. So there was a regal, Persian, Darius used, that was Aramaic script. And a lot of people seem to think, a lot of experts seem to think that actually it came from the Aramaic script. In fact, that may be correct, but I have a certain doubts about there is another hypothesis is Brahm derived from the Indus Valley. So what you are seeing is the Indus Valley. These are like seals, which are very interesting kind of seals you can see. And this is yet to be deciphered. In fact, I have been going through some of the seals, and some of those signs that you see can be seen on our rock inscriptions. However, we still don't know. Some of them we have not been deciphered also in Sri Lanka. So we think those are like kind of like we call them a virama, probably to sort of like to use it as kind of like periods, commas, that kind of stuff that they would have used. So here we have seen it in Sri Lanka also in certain inscriptions here in Sri Lanka. Some of them, the Indus Valley, what you see in the Indus Valley script. But then some of them also we are not very sure. There is another interesting one is swastikas are seen in the Indus Valley script. We also have a lot of swastikas on rock inscriptions in Sri Lanka. So those are like, we call it a virama signs or the virama signs, basically. Like a halant, for instance, halant is virama sign, so very similar to Sinhala script derived from Southern Brahmi. Subsequently, Sinhala script was influenced by Pallava Grantha. Of course, the Pallava Grantha, I have to tell you that Pallava Grantha is another very interesting. They became cursive because of the way that we wrote about the utensils that we used. For instance, we used Ola. We used the way because of the Ola writing on Ola, we had a kind of like became basically very round. When you compare it, our script is very circular type of script, and so because of that, so they are very nice. There's a very pretty script, but they are very, very cursive. Then Eastern, if you look at the Pallava Grantha, of course, that we had a lot of influence, and Eastern scripts such as Kama, Myanmar, influenced also by Pallava script. So the Sinhala has two vowels, which we will be talking about later on when we talk about the script. We have there are two the vowel sounds and also vowel modifiers, and those are not found in other Indic scripts. And if you look at Thai has a sound as a modifier is written in the south eastern or the eastern scripts, such as Khmer and Thai that they have. But other than that, these two vowels are predominantly from in Sri Lanka. So I have said that these you found in the. So what you are seeing right now is the basically Khmer script on the other hand side. Okay, little bit of a Sinhala computerization. Basically, various attempts on Sinhala computerization began in early 80s, and Sinhala was not encoded until 1996, and there is an interesting story about it. And we found out about encoding in Unicode. We actually, the Sri Lankans basically found out a little bit late, but then somewhere in early 90s. And Professor Saman Nayaka, who was the chairman of SINTEC at that time, Council for Information Technology, SINTEC was the government apex body at that time, and so they spearhead the encoding. And before encoding, we had to really figure it out, actually the number of letters in our alphabet. And the letters, of course, when I was a little kid, it was somewhere around 57 letters. Now we have 60 with the fur. Likewise, that they had to come up with a lot of, basically they had the standardizations. So once we did the standardization, we actually encoded it. So to encode that, it was spearheaded by Professor Samaranayaka as the chairman of SIMTEC, and then Dr. S.T. Nandasara and Professor J.B. Disanayaka as a linguist from University of Colombo. So they actually spearheaded the encoding part of it. And later on, the implementation part, of course, Dr. Ruwan Veerasinghe, Professor Gihan Dias, who did the standardization. So we came up with the SLS 1134 in 2010. We did this single standardization somewhere in 2010. So the third revision because I was also on that committee doing the SLS 1134. That's the second revision. And the third revision, which I had to do because I was involved with the Sinhala numerals. And because of that, I had to be part of so I had to do I wrote the third revision, including Sinhala numerals. So Sri Lanka also has its own standard for Tamil input, since Sri Lanka Tamil community prefers to use input method deviating from the Indian implementation. So we have SLS 1326 of 2008. So so our fonts was done somewhere in 2000 to 2002. Some of those actually were done in my lab at the University of Colombo School of Computing in 2001 to 2003. And the full implementation, of course, happened somewhere between 2001 to 2003. There was when we had the tsunami in 2004, although that the Microsoft was not going to put out the Pota or so we had two implementation of that. One is a Pota and Scholar Pota. So the first came Pota. So that 2004, because of tsunami in December 2004, on the Boxing Day tsunami, we had it in Sri Lanka. There was a huge devastation, and so as a help for us to actually do certain computerization, basically to listing, and we had to prepare databases in Sinhala. And as a help, the Microsoft actually put out the Pota initially. And in my lab, we had the implementation of the first fonts. And I had to tell you that the logo that you find for the Sinhala Unicode was actually done by Mr. Vinny Hettigoda in my lab. So as a part of the fonts.lk, which I maintain during that period of time. That is a software development unit of the UCSC, University of Colombo School of Computing, was involved with the initial development of Sinhala Unicode fonts. Prior to that, Dr. Nandasara had done a Sarasavi font, which actually was a proprietary font. So we did the Sinhala Unicode font later. But there was a lot of research was also going on with in Singapore with Dr. Nandasara at one particular time on creating the Sinhala Unicode implementations. However, it was completely, we did it with the releasing of the SLS 1134, and then the rendering engines was, we figured it out how to do the rendering engine. Later on, I was trained to create Unicode fonts as a part of the pan localization project. So we learned formally, though that we did it in our labs, informally, but the formal learning was done. And then later on that I spearheaded the training part of creating fonts, the basic infrastructure of the Unicode in Sri Lanka. So what you are seeing is Unicode version 13.1. You can see basically if you look at it, if you see, so this is our in 1996, 97, when the first it came. Basically, what you are seeing here without this part here, which is the in the basic multilingual plane, what you are seeing is the new Sinhala Lithilatam or the astrological digits, what you are seeing right now here. So those are the letters over here. And we have one single final letter, these fur, which because Sinhala in European languages, where in Indo-Arya languages, the fur is latecomer, basic coming from the Arabic as well as the Western influence actually created fur. So we are using a fur here because the fur sound is not in Sinhala. We don't have z sound, we don't have fur sound. So we don't have a guttural sounds as well. Other than that, we have all the other sounds, but we don't have this, and also the clipping sounds that we don't have, which you find that in click, click, click sounds we don't have, clicking sounds we don't have. So those are not there. However, glottal sounds also are. There is a glottal sounds in Arabic sound, in the Arabic languages, in somewhat in German and in Hebrew, for instance. And those are not there. But the fur is basically we have encoded right now. So you can write with the pharmacy in Sinhala, and earlier with the per sound that we used to write with the F. So we created, so now it is standardized in. So that's also there. And then we have another set of numerals, which is called, which doesn't have a zero, which we found very commonly during the, when we lost our independence. That is the Candian, when we lost, the Candian kingdom lost the independence to British in 1815, and the whole Sri Lanka was under the British. So at that time, we had a archaic numeral. That's called Sinhala Ilakam, for instance. It doesn't have a zero. It is actually it is a multiplicative and additive system, like Tamil numeral, for instance. And so there is a sign for 10, like in Brahmi numerals, you have 20, 30, 40. There are symbols for up to 90. And then there is a symbol for 100. Then there's a symbol for 1,000. So so you can write large numbers using a multiplicative and additive. So I have talked about this in my Brahmi, the Brahmi numeral, evolution of Brahmi numerals in Sri Lanka. So which you can listen to. So the Sinhala Ilakam is a set that is in supplementary, so they are in a supplementary multilingual plane of the Unicode. So these are those numerals. We have a few others that if we find the fractions, we are yet to find fractions. Are you also going to propose there are three signs in the future? One is called Hari sign has to come in here. And then also the Kahapana sign, which that you don't find in rock inscriptions in other Brahmi rock inscriptions. So we may have to encode them somewhere here. So we find there are two major symbols that are very common. We find with Brahmi. So the Brahmi, of course, encoded in separately in Unicode, but then we may have to encode these two other signs as well. So in fact, I talked about Sinhala. We can see the Sinhala numerals. You can see that beauty of it is we have, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then up to 9. Then we have basically as I told you, 10, 20, 30, which actually the Tamil numerals don't. They are also a multiplicative additive system. But then the Tamil numerals that you don't have symbols for these ones up to 90. They have 100 and they have 10, 100 and 1,000. So because of that, the evidence is, in fact, what we found, interestingly, that we are at the moment tracing the evolution of Sinhala numerals. And in fact, I looked at it very carefully. We found some Sinhala numerals, now though that we find them in 1800s, before 1800s also, it's some we find the Kotte period. We find them in Polonnaruwa period. So they would have come, they would have derived, they would have evolved from the Brahmi from somewhere in 4th century, roughly about 4th century CE, prior to the probably Tamil numerals, because they don't, Brahmi had 20, 10, 20, 30, 40, up to 90 symbols. And so they are directly evolving from this, from Brahmi, that you will see the Brahmi numerals. You will see there is a direct evolution to 20, 30, 40. But whereas the Tamil numerals, you don't find them, you don't find these symbols. So I have not found them, probably that they would have been there, but they would have lost it during later on. But in Sinhala, in Ilakam, they retain these symbols. You can see they are very beautiful, very similar to the shapes of our, basically shapes of our, the shapes of the what you see our script. There was a very interesting, the way we write also, there's a fascinating thing about it, that the way that we wrote, we use a stylus. There's a pointed stylus on Ola. So that made them to make it a circular. Other theory that you have, that we have a circular letters, circular shaped letters, that because of the fact that we are an island nation, we have the ocean around the country. And so we can write any of these letters, any of our letters, any of our, basically the letters, using the circles. So it's like waves. So the shapes of the waves come and hit. And with the waves, it's so because of that, so this is a theory that we have, the Sinhala script is very round and circular shape, looking very beautiful. So the numerals also same. So the bottom that you have is with the 0, we have a halant as our 0, which is also evolution that I've been talking about in my other, basically the other my presentations. They also had evolved from the Brahmi numerals, but you can see there is a very similarity between our Eastern script, but it has a 0. 0 is not a dot or an oval shape 0, Gwalior 0, but we have a halant. Halant actually is a 0. There is a reason behind that is we had used a linguistic 0. Halant is a linguistic 0. So we would have used it for, I think it's even older than the normal set that you've seen in camel, but we don't see the evolution. Suddenly they appear. We saw in Manikdana Stupa, bricks. Ironically, that we don't see the evolution as such. So what really happened during this period, that the 4th century CE, something is going through in Sri Lanka. We have a less number of rock inscriptions, but that doesn't mean the literary activities are continued. So most likely that we had written very much on Ola, and lots of writing would have happened, and this evolution would have happened. Now, the interesting other part is in my next presentations that you will see that the Brahmi is evolving towards in Sri Lanka as a multiplicative and additive system. And with that, we can show that there's something happened somewhere in between 4th and 5th century. And that to give rise to these two sets of numerals. And this one of these scripts actually had a 0. And the subsequent Chola invasion in Sri Lanka, the latter part of Anuradhapur period, which is about 900 CE, there was a lot of South Indian influence. South India retained their numeral sets. Because of that, my hypothesis is that actually we use more and more Sinhala ilaka continue to be used in the palace. In addition to because of the cumbersome astrological calculations that they used the what you call these astrological digits, which also they use it for other purposes, like for instance, they numbered bricks, they numbered Ola, the page numbering that they had used this other set as well. So what was the work with IDNs? This is very interesting. The IDNs that it's a kind of a we had a very active so we worked on the international domain names. So we were one of the very first to get international domain names in other than Latin script. For instance, Latin, we got it. We got .lk fairly long time ago. So actually, it's in the latter periods of 1980s. Then we worked on the international domain names, especially that I also got involved with. There's one publication about the domain names in Sinhala, and it's actually they headed by our the language technology research lab, which actually worked very closely with Professor Sarnath Hussain, who spearheaded the pan localization project in 2000 after 2008. So during that period of time, we worked on IDNs also as a part of that, and then Professor Gihanda has actually worked on the IDNs. So somewhere in 2011, we became the second country to have the two IDNs, .lanka and .ilange. So I was very much fascinated by these IDNs because of the multilingual internet was one of the key features right now ICANN is basically pushing for. So our basically Dr. Van Veerasinghe, of course, worked on the international domain names at the time. So we basically, though that I was also part of this lab, language technology research lab, at the time when the Dr. Van became the director of the UCSC, I became the deputy coordinator of the LTRL. So I looked after the basic infrastructure, like a fonts, the input, all of that actually. And then meanwhile, all the NLP part, natural language processing part, was actually looked after by Dr. Van. So the Dr. Van actually, of course, got involved with so much with the OCR work and speech to text and text to speech. That work, there were a lot of work went on at that time. And also the tagging, morphological tags, all of that were used for the translators. And that also work went on at the LTR. And still to this day, they're working on this part. And we have a different right now heads. Dr. Van have left, although that he still work with his research fellows. So this paper that you see there, that has become now kind of like one of the older papers that we wrote long time back in IDNA 2003 and 2008. So so that was like it was a kind of interesting at that time. So we became the second country in the world to have, probably first or the second country with a Latin domain names. So in 2017, there was a call I received from, so there was a time between 2000, of course, 2013, between 2012 and 2017, there was another story. So we, about the variants. So we talked about the IDNs. Now we had this issue of the variant issue. So what are we going to do with the variants? Variants are that you can have. I mean, you can have words or the labels on the internet, which look very similar because of now our scripts, even within our script, that you can have a letters like in which you can later on you can see the ver and mer, for instance, in Sinhala, g and sh in Sinhala, or the Sanjaka. So when we write Ganga, for instance, we use two Gs. One is a Sanjaka. We have there is the nasal sound, which you have the second G, so it becomes Sanjakas. They are called Sanjakas, which is very specific to Sinhala. So you have a Sanjakas. So the Ganga, for instance, there's a little nasal. We call it Nasika, nasal sound. So that so they look very when you have the fonts, you can see sometimes if they are very small in shape. I mean, when you bring it down, you can't distinguish between. So you can have variance. You can have variance in the sense where it looks similar. So within a script you can have. Then you have to look at it the among other scripts, for instance, Kannada and Malayalam, for instance. Malayalam, which has a curve, for instance, they look similar. Then we found out later on when we are doing the second level, I have done basically another assignment where I looked at the variance, again. So the variance was a problem in somewhere in 2012 that we were talking about it. Also, you could have a phishing attacks. So because of that, it was a very important how we dealt with the variance. So Dr. Professor Sarmad Hussain, of course, since that I worked with him in the pan localization project. So so they wanted us to form the ICANN wanted to form a single generation panel. So I co-chaired with Dr. Van Veerasinghe. So we did the work on this, and especially I had to mention Mr. Chamila Yanage, who assisted me preparing the single generation panel. So the ICANN formed the single generation panel in December of 2017. In fact, all the generation panels met in Sri Lanka. Indian generation panels met in Sri Lanka while Sri Lanka formed this panel and began in earnest somewhere in 2017. So we, very interestingly, we are in the MSR 2, 3, 2 also we are there, 3, 4. So we are one of the very early comers to this generation panel work. So the mid 2018, in fact, we released the first draft on rules. And by August, we managed to finish most of the work and release for the public comment. At present, we have these rules for second level as well. Now we have done all of that, right? Basically. So the little bit about the single generation panel, I want to talk about that because this label generation, right now we are in the MSR 5. So the root zone MSR 5 that we have about 33,000 plus code points. So that we have basically plus code points, that is more than 30,000. In addition to that, we have about 28 scripts now with this LGR, so MSR 5. So language covered by the script, we write Sinhala predominantly. By the way, when we talked about Sinhala, there is when we go back towards, let's say, first and second century, a lot of these rock inscriptions are in Sinhala Prakrit. And Sinhala Prakrit is a very old type of, basically Sinhala, if you look at it, very old, or the ancient type. So though that a lot of people seem to think that Sinhala is after 8th century or the 9th century, like the Pujavaliya that we wrote. So, but whatever it is, Sinhala is a very ancient, they belong to a very older version of Prakrit that we had basically spoken at the time when Arhat Mahinda arrived with Buddhism. So the Pali, of course, when you say Pali, actually it's a Magadhi language. Magadhi was actually became basically with the grammar that was done in Sri Lanka. The Pali becomes the vernacular that's the ecclesiastic language. However, it becomes a vernacular for a lot of East Asian countries, like in Khmer, for instance, in Khmer and Myanmar. So even the Chronicles is written in Pali right now, and whatever that we call Mahavamsa that had been written. So the lingua franca. So it became at one stage it became the lingua franca of the eastern basically East Asian countries as well. So among the became that, and the Pali became the lingua or the basically the script. I'm sorry, no, there is no script for Pali, right? So the Pali doesn't have, so Pali can be written in so many different scripts. Like for instance, Thai, they write in Thai, in Myanmar. So the Pali is written by all of these other scripts. But the Pali language itself, so that you have to differentiate between now Sinhala, of course, has a language and a script. So the Sinhala is written with our own Sinhala language. However, you have Hindi, which that is written in Devanagari. We use Devanagari to write Sanskrit as well. So in Sri Lanka, in a lot of there are rock inscriptions also. We have in Nagari, which actually preceded Devanagari. So we have in Sri Lanka, we have a Nagari, we have Devanagari. We also have a very ancient Tamil. It's an old Tamil. That's a Chola script is in Sri Lanka. The Pallava to whatever separate the Chola also. So we have Sanskrit as well. We write Sanskrit in Sinhala. So we write in Sinhala the Pali and Sanskrit as well. So because of that, recently they introduced because of that in Sinhala we don't use, for instance, Chandrabindu, for instance. That's again a nasal Nasikya, but we don't use it to write Sanskrit. However, that now they have introduced. In fact, the Sri Lankan government is not in favor because in our books we have attested only like one or two books, which is again we found it very rare books. There were two attestations. Other than that, we don't use Chandrabindu for our Sanskrit when we write shlokas in Sinhala. So the repertoire, the MSR third is here. I have not put there, so it is a very similar, which has been there for 4 and 5 also. 7 to code point, 4 sequences. You can see in Sinhala, there are some of the ones that we don't use. For instance, we don't use it right now. There are Iru, we are not using. Iru, which is up there, and then there's only one word that you can see the row 5 here. So which one here? This one. Other than that, we can see all the glyphs. So there is all the glyphs here, right? The ones that we don't know, we have removed them from, we have excluded those from our label generation. So these are the general generation panel had decided are in script variant code points due to a similar shapes and character, which I talked to you about. There is a sir, the first one is a sir and g, they look very similar. So the b and her, you can see, her and b, ch and v. This is again a Sanyaka, right? O and b, which is amber, we write amber with this. A and Lu, for instance, Iru, like this. So we have some of the ones very similar in shape. Then we did another very interesting one. We went through the cross scripts. So you can see the cross scripts. In fact, I have identified several others when I did the second label. You can see the Sinhala. This is Anushwara, which you can see. No, so in Sri Lanka, of course, in Sinhala. In Sinhala, and when you compare with lots of, so in order to make a label, you had to have several glyphs together. So when we look at it, actually that you don't find there are no cross-script variants, so we didn't have to do that much. So the Sinhala Anushwar is one of them. You can see Sinhala, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam. They have the very similar. This is actually a linguistic zero, what you are seeing right now. Then you have the Visarga. Visarga is, of course, in the bottom, the second part. You can see the Sinhala Visarga, Devanagari, Gujarati, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam. Then the other one is similar looking ones are G, which you have the Malayalam. Then this Shur, again the same. Then these are modifier, there's two modifiers. Myanmar also that we have put in here, right? So, but then confusable cases, but then they are not exactly, it will have a huge impact upon other variants. So the port point, we have given the categories. We have consonant, vowel, matra, vowel signs, Anushwara, and Visarga, and Halanta. So there are three of these actually that you have. So then we have given the rules also for them actually to create a tool to have a label generation tools. So basically we have given that in our paper. So one of the things I want to talk about, very important one here, which I think has a real impact in Sinhala. So that when we talk about Sinhala. So one of the things about is IDNA 2003, which is for International Domain Names, 2003, did not support hidden characters such as zero with join and zero with non-join. It's very important for our Sinhala to write with a zero with join. Like for instance, our the country name starts with a Shri, for instance. Shri is this character, which is made of this glyph made of three parts here. So there's a top, there's a sh, and there's a top modifier. This one she, then this halkirima, basically rare, halkirima shra. So this is a Shri. So our country name cannot be rewritten without this zero with joiner. We don't use zero with non-joiner. We use zero with non-joiner just to have a separate glyphs to write a separate letter. But zero with joiner is a very important, for there is a rakar form and the yansa form, both are in our zero with joiner. So there was a problem came when we use the Shri. That's one of the reasons why that you don't see our basically in our the CCTLD, especially the IDN part of it, where you have a Lanka, for instance. So you don't have a Sri Lanka. But actually, the Sri Lanka came quite a bit later into our basically to write our basically our old name of Sri Lanka was Lanka, but later on it became Sri Lanka somewhere about a little bit earlier than 1500, somewhere about 8th, 9th centuries. Then only we started. So our golden period, of course, was Anuradhapura period, then the Polonnaru period for about 200 years. The Anuradhapura period lasted about 1,000 years in our history, 1,200 years actually. That was the capital of Sri Lanka. And so it was, so we went through a fairly long, it's like the Roman Empire. We had a very long, basically about 1,000 years. Then we had about 200 years, of course, with the Polonnaru period. It's the height of our civilization, the latter part of Anuradhapura period, and the beginning of Polonnaru period. Then we had another very prosperous time during the Kotte period, we call it, somewhere around 1500s. There were a lot of literature was written during that period of time. So then after that, we had a lot of because we had the Portuguese occupied our maritime provinces, not the whole Sri Lanka. We basically for 200 to 300 years we had the Portuguese. So the Portuguese had a lot of influence on our language also. There are a lot of Portuguese words in Sinhala. So we have these forms, Rakar and Yansa. Yansa is Halanta here. Rakar form is Halanta Ra. So the Ra. So it's a very important. A lot of Sanskrit words are basically with the Ra, Rakar form and the answer forms. When you say truth, Satya, for instance, Satya comes with the Yansa form. Then later on that we actually made a representation, and now the IDN 2008 now support the above. So allow these characters. Now today, if you, for instance, if you look at it, there are some places it breaks because Wijayawardhana, like for instance, the Facebook where Meta, for instance, in the desktop applications, you have a little issue with the Rakar form or Yansa form. But when it comes to mobile application, mobile versions, you don't have that issue. You will have it gets rendered properly. However, my suggestion would be, we have been looking into now encoding these two, like in Malayalam, they have done several like this. We are looking at to see whether we can have this Rakar and Yansa forms basically encoded in the Unicode. So there are a lot of debates in Sri Lanka right now whether to encode or not. So anyway, so if you want the references, we can have a language.lk. In fact, if you want to look at so our .lanka and .ilang IDNs, of course, that we have now, a lot of people are actually using it. We will be talking about later on, we will be talking about universal acceptance. When we talk about universal acceptance, I will actually talk about some of these things again and again. So the helpcenter.lk is a good place for you to visit if you have any issues. But if you want a content about about the Sinhala script and our fund making, I think the good place to visit is language.lk, English. So you can see the help center, you will see actually our two .lanka and ilange in function. So we have a Sinhala content pointing to the .lanka, and the Tamil content we are pointing to .ilange. So, and then we also have some sites. A lot of people are also now creating their sites using .lanka with the IDNs. So the next time I will talk about it. Thank you. If you have any questions, can you please write to me? My email, my email, I have given it in the beginning of my presentation. So if you write to me, so you can have the email Wijayawardhana my personal email, wijayawardhana@gmail.com. Thank you.